So the second part of today has more been about dreaming future, looking forward. And we will now begin with our closing session. And I will like to invite on the stage Tariq Krim. He is an awarded, well-known tech innovator, speaker on various topics that relate to technology and innovation. And I think you also talk quite a bit about social and cultural responsibility, and with the storytelling and the new technology, where we're all going and how it will shape us as humans, and more specifically, I guess, as Europeans as well. So I'll give the stage over to you now, and we'll hear more about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. I'm quite happy to be back in Tallinn. I just want to say to Aral, I'm actually excited you talked about Star Trek and positive vision of movies. And I think it's important that I think each of us went, especially people in tech, were impressed by movies. And that was one of the key decisions for us. So I'm going to talk about what I call the post-internet world. And you probably wonder, like, why post-internet? We're already in it. The truth is, the first story of the internet, the first chapter is basically closed now. We kind of connected 3/4 of the population online. Sounds crazy when you think about it. 3 people out of 4 are addicted online every single day. That's what Ben Evans from Andreessen Horowitz called the access story. So he says the access story is finished. What's next? So I'm going to briefly talk a little bit about me as, so I started my career online as a computer hacker. I kind of loved computers. I loved exploring the world. And one day I saw a movie actually called $1000 millions with Patrick Devers, and I decided I would like to be a journalist, investigative journalist, of course. So I started working in the issues of cybersecurity. That was in the mid-90s. It was quite new. And it's funny because now when I just open my phone, same stories, 20, 25 years later. So of course, I found technology is extremely cool. I went to Silicon Valley. I pretty much had the whole dream. I went to Burning Man in the early 90s. I went to see Wired opening in San Francisco. I met some of the coolest people there. And I was just, wow, this world is amazing. This is the future. It's positive. And now I'm a little bit less positive about it. I mean, for also personal reasons, I've seen the world changing fast. I mean, each of us have seen the world completely going from being kind of positive to total despair. And basically, one of the questions I have is, sometimes I wonder, am I in the wrong simulation of the world? There's this theory that we live in a simulation, and maybe we're in the wrong version of it, the one that turns bad, the probably one that works well. But the question is, I'd like to remember, 93 is basically the time the internet came out. I was built earlier, but the web released it in 93. And when I think about this, I'm kind of angry. And I'm angry for one reason. Very simple. How is it possible that the 2 technology invented in Europe, Linux and the web, are now being used to dominate Europe? That sounds kind of crazy, no? When you think about it. I mean, sometimes I just wonder, how is it possible that the 2 main innovators, Tim Berners-Lee is still in Europe, but Linux went in the US, and basically the Linux became an American project at some point. Why? It's a question that actually bothered me for a long time. The thing is, we love to talk about innovators when they're famous. Before that, So when we think about the web, yes, this is where the web was invented at CERN. But 4 or 5 companies are basically now printing money just using these technologies and dominate the world. So in '93, it's interesting. The American had a vision. Information highway that turned into the internet, but they had the vision that technology would actually turn as becoming the biggest economical power, they would sustain their superiority, and they had that vision. So they saw the web and Linux as an opportunity. We just included this in the strategy. What was Europe doing at the same time? They were focused on building clean diesel. I think that's why they call it. Now, as you know, I think the CEO of Audi is in prison. The entire industry has been seen as cheating on these issues. And this entire investment we put was in something different. We didn't go in that direction. And bear in mind with that photo where you can see Steve Bannon, one of the former or still advisor of Trump with Elon Musk, that connection, that political connection about technology is still there in the US. So I'd like to talk about the alternative. One day I woke up and I wondered, this app that I use on my phone from these 4 companies are like McDonald's. You know what's funny about McDonald's is if you go in, I'm sure you have it here, like every country in the world, or in Paris or in Tallinn, actually use local product. You have local salad, local beef, local potatoes, and it's all used to create the same generic product, the same everywhere in the world. And in some ways, that's what happens. We browse, we include all of this to create extremely generic product. And in some ways, this is a data center, some data center. Technology became about growth, it became about winners take all, it became about being the biggest, the fastest. Does it remind you something? Pretty much same thing happened in the food industry. I read somewhere about, you know, the mac and cheese, this dish in the US, at some point had no cheese. They said, oh, we're going to start reducing and making some more money. And at some point, they had only fake cheese in the mac and cheese. And I don't think that this is what the world we want to live in. I think it's not only about technology. I mean, technology is everywhere. We have more than we want. It's all about values. I mean, taking the time to do things, crafting, you know, it's an art, doing unique things, unscale, not building mass product. That's what we also well known about, especially in France. Building things that are made with our hands in some ways. I just put these images because in some ways, this completely contradicts the vision of if I have a phone, I need to optimize, I need to hack to do more during the day. And oh, I need to do zero inbox, so I'm going to use an AI that is going to read my emails and tell me what I do. And basically, we come in the cult of performance. We need to become superheroes. Maybe not. So over the last 2 years, I've been thinking slow web, like slow food. I've been looking about the slow movement, slow living, slow food, all of these ideas, and how can we apply that to software? Because that's actually an interesting problem. How do we build software that we can be proud of? And as a software designer and entrepreneur, I kind of want to make sure that what I do is actually makes sense and follow a certain type of values. The first one is actually transparency. I'll give you a simple example. You use your phone, you're on Facebook or Instagram, and you like a picture. What you see is the like button become blue or the little heart. That's what you see. That's what the software tells you. Reality is different. In the back, your profile is being changed. You're going to have new affiliations. If you like a photo of someone else, you become prioritized to him. If your profile indicates that this or that, or this political affiliation, or this and that, everything changed. So suddenly, you're being retargeted, reprofiled, and you have no idea about it. For you, just click on the button. There's no transparency. There's nothing. The software doesn't tell you what he really does. And that is a problem. It's very subtle because we don't need to tell people, oh, give us your data. We just need to ask, take photos. Hey guys, it's great. We all put photos. I mean, there's been thousands of photos being done here. A photo tells everything. Now with AI, you can know exactly what's in the photo, you can recognize people, you can actually find the location, the time, the machine, everything. It's a passive way of feeding the beast in some ways. Can I have water? Can I have a little bit? Because I think I'm a bit, I always keep telling people, does anyone say publicly who they vote for? We usually are like, no, I don't want to say that. Doesn't matter, your Spotify playlist can say that with 95% chance. So suddenly, you're in a situation where a lot of the information you give become information that can be used for political purpose. Of course, we all know about the Cambridge Analytica, but Cambridge Analytica is level 1. Now we're ending up to the level 2. And at some point, level 3. There's an idea that with psychometrics and what Cambridge Analytica and others are using, you can know someone better than they know themselves. And I always say, when you have the power of AI, you're an engineer, you're like someone at Facebook or in these companies, you have the power of a father to a child. If you have a child who's believing in you, you can tell him anything you want. You can tell him truth, lies, you can manipulate him. Then as a father, you have a responsibility to decide what you're going to do, what you're going to teach. It is the same thing. When you have this incredible level of power, what do you do? And this is an extremely important problem. Transparency is essential. Attention. You're looking at a picture and not in me. These apps are basically designed to manipulate your brain all the time. I made a conference with a friend, an artist, who's also a big fan of Philip K. Dick, the sci-fi author, and we said, think about it. In some ways, our psyche and our brain process everything we've seen during the day. That's how you do your dreams. Your dreams are based on everything you've seen during the day. And if everything you see is being generated by an AI, it suddenly means that, in some ways, the machine controls what you dream about. Privacy, of course. We always talk about privacy. By the way, this is the only thing we talk about. The GDPR, the right, the Google is bad, and all those things. Question is, what is privacy? Remember when you're a kid in your room and you ask your mom, can I have some privacy? Do you tell your mom, you can put a camera, but only on my desk? Or do you say, leave me alone? I need some time to express myself. I need some time to become myself. So this is what the media talk about privacy. It's like, okay, we're like absorbing all this data. But privacy should be what Google did with incognito. It means you should be able to say, I'm opting out. From now on, we all have this kind of guilty, stupid music we want to listen in loops every day. Before, when you had a computer, you could like put it on your player all the time. Now, if you start listening to Britney Spears, that's not my guilty, just an example. For 80 times during the day, the algorithm is going to say, oh my God, I understand now. You're going to have some weird advertising on Instagram. It means that any single thing you do has a consequence because you're being spied on days and night. The moment you go to sleep, this thing keeps calculating the first thing it's going to show you during the day. And by the way, if the first thing you see is someone you can't stand or something you can stand, they take control of your day. And this is done by purpose. It's done on purpose. Because when you're depressed and when you're euphoric, you don't sell the same kind of ads. So the question is, which world do we want to live in? What's the future? For a long time, that's what we were sold as, like, oh, machine technology is going to be amazing. That was the step one, it's going to be great. And every time I used to go to this conference, everybody was so excited. Wow, it's so amazing. And now it's more about like, oh, AI is going to kill us all. It's kind of it's so easy. It's funny because the same media who said this is amazing, these guys are genius, and now they're all coming out, oh, I can't believe nobody investigated Mark Zuckerberg or Sheryl Sandberg for the last 10 years. Well, you didn't. And I always have a joke about the AI. It's that the computer took over the world, and 15 minutes later, it ran out of batteries. So in some ways, the main question, and I will close on that, is all the debates we have right now are wrong. The question is not, is China or the US, is a battle between China and the US and Europe in the middle? The question is more about understanding the people who build these technologies have disaligned interests. I call them now digital supremacists. They believe digital is over everything. Data will rule the world. And the real debate, and the only debate we should have, is how do we make sure that our values and technologies are aligned with the way we want to live? Thank you very much. Okay.
Tariq, a lot of these things, personally, I can agree with as well, and a lot of my work is around cybersecurity, working at CGI, and I recently did a Google data download. All the stuff that they have on me, I didn't even know existed as an app or as a facility, and it came to well over 20 gigabytes, and it included all of my deleted search history from the browser, so that was quite enlightening. However, Sten will now join you on stage for a bit of a Q&A and a small fireside chat. And after that, we will close the program.
Hello again. I'm really sorry that we had another discussion, Claudia Landesberger,
yes.
that we actually yesterday had a fantastic debate, how the ideas around slow web and European cinema come together. Unfortunately, Tallinn is known for two great things. Number one is the Black Nights Film Festival and the absence of great flights. So unfortunately, she had to catch her flight. But yesterday, we were really debating about the fact that how this relates to the cinema industry. And Tariq, you've been a writer and hopefully a screenwriter very soon. And I think the points what you gave out, which comes down to attention, transparency, and privacy, are something that we can actually relate to the role of cinema and culture as well.
Yes, absolutely. I think. I think Harold mentioned earlier the narratives. The power of cinema is about building different narratives, and I think so. I'm kind of a nerd in AI movies, so I think I've seen every movie ever made, including the worst of the worst, because I wanted to you always have ideas over the course of since being a teenager. And you're right, most of them are actually very negative, and most of them are completely. Basically, Europe doesn't exist, or very little. And I wonder how we can create stories that include technology, because now the next battle is about balancing technology with the real life. Right now, we lost 90% of the time we should be spending with friends and kids and doing real things is useless on the phone. So now we need to bring that balance. And so we need also to show this positive utopia where people are actually interacting with technology in a nice way. And I just wanted to say this, I was always also a fan of all the movies of aliens coming to Earth, and most of them are extremely bad for humans, except one. I mean, the Steven Spielberg, the movie with François Truffaut, where you had a very positive interaction, or recently The Arrival, exactly. And this is one of very few, and I think we need to create a more positive narrative, but also we need to understand that this is a political debate. For a long time, it was a technical debate for technicians at the second floor, maybe the second underground floor, and now it's actually the biggest and most important debate.
I want to continue actually with the subject of values and European values. It's a very interesting time where super platforms, as our joint friend Guido van Nispen puts it, are taking over. The political situation is very complex, and besides boosting the industry, I think the European cinema will have a very important place in not only for imagination but also values, and something that you've been recently writing about in a very touching manner is something called digital supremacy. And that relates to this aspect as well. So how do you see the value space and the mission for the value space? And could you also give us your take on the danger of digital supremacists?
I don't think, so I use that term because I actually think it's make everybody uncomfortable because it actually remind about something else that is even less comfortable. But it's true. We used to live in a world that we understood through philosophy, and now everything is learned through data. And this is a problem, by the way, that the movie industry has. And I've been very unsatisfied by everything I've seen on Netflix recently. I was thinking, oh, this is one of my favorite directors. This is the movie I wish he had done, by the way, 10 years ago.
Okay, say the name.
Mute. I love Duncan Jones. And I saw the movie and I was just, this is not really interesting. Not at all. And the reason is, you have this data now, analytics and all this information. As you know, a movie is an experience good. It means that the value of the good happened when people see it. And suddenly someone out of nowhere come in and it becomes this incredible thing. And everything where you're trying to test, this is why I actually appreciate directors that can have the power to get the money and the vision, like maybe very, very few, Christopher Nolan, Cuarón. The list is coming shorter, but this is also...
Guillermo del Toro.
Yes. But the list is coming shorter, and I think we were talking earlier about it, the EU need to understand where they put their money and what's for. If public money is used to push the digital supremacist agenda, then we have a problem. Because don't forget, these are a very small amount of people, maybe 10,000 people around the world, who really have the power to change this. But
give me an example, because people are not familiar with the concept.
If you're a young product manager at Google or Facebook for one of these different products, and you decide tomorrow to change a little bit of the product, you have an impact on 1 billion people the day after. Question is, how is it possible that a privileged class that hasn't been elected by anyone can make decisions at that level? It's unheard of. I mean, even the president, the premier of China doesn't have that power. Like the day after, it's like this. China is quite good at, with the social credit system to trying to move in this. But Facebook can do that like this tomorrow. Tomorrow, they change something in the chat. And by the way, the funny story about chat is most of these apps are actually made by people who have Asperger kind of, they're very nerdy, and they're like the one who say, well, I don't really want to talk to you, so I'm going to use emoticon. And suddenly the entire world is discussing through emotions. So we don't talk clearly. We don't say, I hate you, I love you, I'm like sending you a little thing, and eventually you will understand. So, and these are the kind of impacts. It's enormous.
It all, I think, comes down to the sort of the concluding point that we do need some plumbing in the form of technology. We're going into a new era with Europe, and we need to make some educated decisions where we're not being run by digital supremacists, but perhaps given bold visions by filmmakers and creatives alike. So you actually came up a few weeks ago with a very touching blog post, with your principles. So, would you talk about your principles and what would be your dream vision for Europe, especially post-2020?
Well, so there you come to a point that is one of the, also I didn't talk about it in my speech, but one of the reasons I was kind of changing perspective is I was really affected personally during the Paris attack. I lost friends, and I was supposed to be in one of the places, and thankfully I was late. That's the only reason I'm still here. And I've seen after that horrible event, of course, the collapse of the world. I mean, the Brexit, the U.S. situation, again, 3 states, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, 78,000 voters that changed the course of the world. And now Brazil, Italy, places where Cambridge Analytica and Steve Bannon, Hungary as well. And so it was kind of depressing, and one of the questions I had, and I was trying to wonder myself, is how can you live in a world where every day your moral compass is challenged? You wake up and you see the news and you're like, this is insane. They're going to drill somewhere in California. It's like one of the most beautiful coasts, and Trump allowed to drill there. I was like...
Yeah, and by the way, the solution is raking the forest.
Yes.
It's a very common practice in Finland, apparently.
But we're talking about Google. I mean, there's 2.3 million videos about Earth being flat. And it was even last week a flat Earth convention when like some of these YouTubers, I forgot the name, like a disgusting person was there and trying to reach out to get more audience. And suddenly you're in a world where Google is the biggest purveyor of fake science. This is insane. And I wonder like what's the response? Because one of the problems we do have in Europe is we have an inferiority complex. We believe everything is better there. The truth is, the system is failing in the US. The system of social credit will fail because you cannot sustain. You can sustain for a decade. Look at what's happening in Iran. You know, first it was very strong, and now the people were supposed to be the moral leaders, and they're all corrupt. I mean, the system decayed over time. And so we have to see the world as a multi-layer world and as a dynamic. It's not one side, you know, it's not like one slide, you know, nobody wants to live in a McKinsey slide, you know, where everything is perfect. No, the reality is the world is messy. And the world, by the way, the politician's sole job is to deal with the messiness. And now a lot of politicians are like, oh no, this is too ugly, I'm standing above it. And it's not working. And AI won't fix this, by the way, if you were asking. So one of the things I discovered is I want to go back to the roots of understanding what are things. So I stopped watching the media completely. For 2 years, I didn't watch the news. And then I started changing the narrative. I decided to go follow, instead of following CNN or all these things, following academics and scientists, and have them give me the facts. Because we're also in a world now of empathy as a service, you know, like, or I call it more disposable empathy. So there's every day there's like a catastrophe. There's this car dust fall with kids, and then the TV is gonna go like shark trying to interview all the parents, and you're gonna be, oh, it's so sad. And 2 days after, it's forgotten. You have to think about something else. And I actually believe that our ability to feel is limited. You know, we can recharge this, but and as long as we don't, and I think that's some politicians didn't understand, is that you need to make sure that the environment makes people feel good. It's not only about money, about budget, it's about things, it's about creating an environment where people believe, okay, my kids will have a better future, or at least my kids will figure out how to fix the challenge of the future, because when we're going to need thousands and thousands of scientists. Now we're producing dumb people whose sole capability is to play with, all these internet games. Instead of, pushing Africa, we're going to need the mind and of the young Africans, because 20 years from now, the youth will be in Africa. These people need to be trained to become scientists, engineers. Because if they're not, when we're going to need, the arm and the work to fix the earth, because we are going to have to do it, it won't be there. So right now, I feel like we also need to remember Europe was built as a vision for the next 70 years. It was not like we're going to deal with the day-to-day problem. And Europe need to figure out how to build a vision for the next 50 years and still stand on the values and make sure the values are still available in the digital world. And it's not because someone 30 years old has a success in an app doesn't qualify him to run healthcare, government, and things like that. You're qualified to build stuff, but if you want to deal with social subjects, you need more than that. And I think the number one question, and for everything, including cinema platform, there's no inferiority complex. The next era is open. Everything is at play. I mean, look at what the disasters of what happened in the US with Facebook and Google, and now it's going to be Senate committees and Senate committees and Senate committees for the next 2 years, because now the Democrats are back in the Congress, and they're going to start going after because everybody wants this, and even in Europe. So we need to come with something else. We cannot wait for Silicon Valley to kind of fall.
Or the Chinese.
Or the Chinese to grow in there. We need to figure out, we say in French, la nature a horreur du vide. You need to fill that emptiness with something.
In your blog post, and I would like to finish this, you had a beautiful quote around creativity. Do you remember it by heart?
Nope, but you will.
Do you want me to read it?
Sure.
So Tariq wrote, and this actually touched me a lot. So he wrote that creativity is an internal process that only coexists with a nice external environment. This is why the choice of people, ideas, and places are so important. And I think, if you may conclude here, I think, Europe as a place of creativity, of people, ideas is really important. And here today we discussed some of the options, and we can all actually make a big change for Europe 2020 plus. That concludes our conference. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.